Welcome everybody to this press conference today. Our guest speaker is Mr. Douglas Bettcher, who is Director of Prevention of Noncommunicable Diseases at the World Health Organization. We're joined by Ms. Kashiwabara, who also works at the World Health Organization. Mr. Bettcher is here in Tokyo from his headquarters in Geneva to help explain and guide a series of new anti-smoking bills that are being considered by the Parliament. So without any other ado, I give you Mr. Bettcher.
Thank you, Mr. Krall, and it's great to be back in Japan. I've been working in the capacity of World Health Organization over 20 years to support Japan in its advance of its tobacco control work. I was the coordinator, you saw from my CV, of the negotiations of WHO's first treaty, the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which is a legally binding instrument with 180 parties. And Japan in 2004 became the 19th party of that treaty. But despite being an early party to the Framework Convention, tobacco control has lagged behind the rest of the world in Japan. And I wanted to speak with you today, particularly now, because now is a very crucial time in Japan in advance of the 2019 World Cup, Rugby Cup, and the 2020 Summer Olympics. That Japan now is at a critical point and to seize the moment to adopt a comprehensive national smoke-free law. The business and health case for comprehensive smoke-free laws are solid. And this really is what I'll describe as a golden opportunity for Japan to better protect its people from the deadly effects of exposure to secondhand smoke. Japan is such an advanced country socially, economically, and technologically, but in this area, it is way behind much of the rest of the world in its tobacco control policies, especially vis-a-vis its tobacco control policies to protect its citizens from the toxic and deadly exposure to secondhand smoke. Japan, one recent newspaper I saw a couple weeks ago described Japan as a paradise for smokers. And I'm sure that Japan would not want to have that title. This is not a good impression to give the rest of the world, as Japan is preparing and investing so much to prepare for the 2020 Summer Olympics, which I'm sure are going to be an overwhelming success. Now is the perfect time for Japan to change this negative perception of its tobacco control laws and and also the absence of a comprehensive law to protect against the exposure of secondhand smoke. So just in opening, I wanted to give a quick overview of tobacco control in Japan vis-a-vis the rest of the world, and really focus on secondhand smoke exposure. So tobacco control, this is an excerpt from what WHO refers to as our Global Tobacco Control Report. It is a global report that we issue every 2 years, which summarizes the state of play of tobacco control in all of our 194 member states of the World Health Organization. And I had mentioned that Japan ratified the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control in June of 2004. Currently, smoking rates amongst men have declined. They're around 30%. Women's smoking rates have stayed relatively stable over the years at 7.9%. Tobacco use, according to recent studies here, surveys here, about 120,000 people die of tobacco use, but there's a new Lancet burden of disease study that puts that figure higher, probably over 160,000. But the figure I want to focus on is also the number of deaths separately from exposure of non-smokers to secondhand smoke. It's estimated about 15,000 people die needlessly from exposure to other people's smoke, therefore as innocent bystanders. These are mainly women and children. And when we look in the WHO Global Tobacco Control Report, we measure every 2 years and provide a score of the key interventions that are proven to reduce consumption of tobacco use. So we call this M-Power. The power measures are P for smoke-free policies, so the best practice. So you'd have a dark blue here if you had the best practice, and I'll show you countries that have best practice, are 100% bans of smoking in all public places, workplaces, including bars and restaurants with no designated smoking areas. Cessation programs, counseling, free counseling, toll-free quit line. Japan is doing better here. Health warnings are second from the bottom. There's no picture warnings on packages here. It's at the second from the lowest score. There's not yearly mass media campaigns. There's no comprehensive advertising ban. There have been, however, important to note, there have been some tax increases on tobacco in recent years, which have increased the rate of taxation to a higher standard. It would be sort of middle score in our assessment of the Global Tobacco Control Report. Now, Japan has the seventh largest number of smokers in the world, even though the prevalence rates amongst men have been decreasing in recent years. So the number one highest number of smokers is in China, followed by India, Indonesia, United States, Russian Federation, Pakistan, and then Japan, followed by Brazil, Bangladesh, and Germany. Now, let's focus on the topic. The key area that I'd like to discuss there is the protection of exposure to from the deadly and hazardous effects of secondhand smoke, which it's absolutely rock-solid scientific evidence that secondhand smoke causes heart disease, myocardial infarcts, lung cancer, contributes to strokes. And in fact, it's very interesting that the first data created, the first evidence of this came from this country. In the 1980s, Professor Hirayama actually did a very, very historic study, which Professor Hirayama took a sample of smoking husbands and compared the wives of smoking husbands with the wives' health with smoking husbands, so non-smoking husbands and smoking husbands, and he found that the rate of lung cancer of wives of smoking husbands was much higher, and that really started the whole research into showing how deadly secondhand smoke exposure is. So in our last Global Tobacco Control Report in 2014, Japan had the lowest score, with no comprehensive legislation in any of these areas: healthcare facilities, educational facilities, universities, government facilities, indoor offices, workplaces, restaurants, cafes, pubs, bars, public transport. To have a perfect score, you'd have to score yes in all of these areas. Now, this is a map of the world 2 years ago, showing that in fact that the dark blue countries are actually the countries that actually have adopted comprehensive 100% smoke-free laws, the ones that are in the darkest blue. When we release our new report this summer, there will be many more to add to this. But in 2014, smoke-free legislation at the highest level of achievement covered 1.3 billion people, lived in 49 countries, 18% of the world's population, completely smoke-free public places and workplaces, and including all bars and restaurants, no designated smoking areas in bars and restaurants and discotheques, etc. And when we look at this map, we can see it's not only high-income countries. We have low-income countries, for example, in Africa, Burkina Faso, Chad, Madagascar, Nepal, that have adopted comprehensive smoke-free laws. Middle-income countries, we have 30 countries and territories, including the West Bank and Gaza Strip, middle-income countries in South America, Africa, Asia, that are at the highest level of achievement, and also high-income countries. And also note that the big swath is Russia. Russia, that has many, many, many more smokers and a much higher rate of smoking than in Japan. But with the Sochi Olympics, China became 100% smoke-free. So if we divide that up as well too, we see that there is a distribution of the 1.3 billion people in these 49 countries in high-income countries, middle-income countries, and low-income countries. In fact, the most number of people covered by 100% smoke-free policies are in middle-income countries, about 863 million. But already 82 million people in low-income countries, the poorest countries in the world, have managed to push forward and are implementing 100% smoke-free policies to protect their populations. Now, the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare of Japan recently released, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a draft law to be considered, draft provisions for a new comprehensive smoke-free law in Japan. Japan does not have a comprehensive law now, and in fact there's no city and there's no prefecture in this country that has a perfect comprehensive law. Even Hyogo Prefecture and Kanagawa Prefecture have only partial restrictions. They don't have a restriction at the highest level. So what does this proposed regulation, this proposed law of the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare propose? It proposes provisions, some provisions that are very positive. For example, complete bans and complete protection from the deadly effects of secondhand smoke in healthcare facilities, educational facilities, universities, and government facilities. But where we run into some problems are only partial protections and the proposals of having designated smoking rooms in restaurants, indoor offices, cafes, pubs, bars, and public transport, which would not be health preventing, would not prevent against the harms of secondhand smoke in those areas. So I wanted to just go over some of the evidence that partial bans, this is what we would call a partial ban. So it shows a real improvement, what the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare is proposing, but this partial ban would not be scientifically proven as a best practice or protective of the Japanese population. I just wanted to show a couple of examples. After the Olympics in Beijing in 2008, Beijing implemented a partial smoking ban that had only minimal, and that didn't cover, it had only partial bans in restaurants, bars, etc., and many indoor places. And it shows here that the percentage of smokers between 2008 and 2012 who noticed smoking in indoor places remained about the same. So there was really no decrease with this partial ban in Beijing between 2008 and 2012. As a result, and I'll discuss that more later, China has now Beijing, China has now adopted, as of 2015, has implemented 100% smoke-free ban, no designated smoking areas, 100% protection. Now I want to focus a little bit on the Spanish example, to show that legislation with partial bans just don't work. It's called now the Spanish model, where Spain implemented a smoke-free law. It was adopted in 2005 and implemented in 2006. They included public places, workplaces, public transport, but very similarly to this proposal from the Minister of Health, Labor, Welfare, there were exceptions for the hospitality section. Partial bans in restaurants, cafes, pubs, and bars. Also this very complicated formula that if you were a cafe, bar, pub over 100 square meters, then you could have designated smoking areas, separate rooms, but if you were less than 100 square meters, there would be no restrictions, and owners could voluntarily declare business as smoke-free, but only a few did so. Long years of tobacco industry interference in Spain gave birth to the so-called Spanish model. The model encouraged by the tobacco industry was to have courtesy of choice to establish smoking and non-smoking rooms in the same restaurant or bar, traditional hospitality to enhance the comfort for customers in small restaurants, cafes, and bars, and a smoking place, a smoking lounge concept for large public spaces. Now, the tobacco industry used many different ways to interfere in Spain's discussion of a comprehensive smoke-free law. Preventing the implementation of the 100% smoke-free policies in the hospitality sector in Spain always has been important for the tobacco industry anywhere in the world. This was not unique to Spain. This is the same model used all over the world. The industry considered Spain as a very benevolent country from which to export a model that would serve their interests. The industry documents indicate that the socializing role of bars and restaurants, its intensive use by the population, diversity of supply and type of users turned Spain into a platform from which to create a domino effect. So try to export this Spanish model to the rest of the world. And they used several different tactics to interfere with the political, economic, social, media, and scientific areas for justifying a complete ban. And in fact, between 2006 and 2011, the tobacco industry actively exported this Spanish model, this partial ban, to Chile, Denmark, Portugal, Romania, who passed similar legislation. Other countries, such as Guatemala, resisted, but it was documented that the industry pressured the government. And how did they do this? In Spain, as in all countries that now move, the 49 countries that have now adopted complete bans on smoking in all public places and workplaces in 2000 and since 2004. Generally, it's the hospitality industry that pushes certain arguments to argue against complete bans, especially in the hospitality sector. In Spain, financial contributions were made to hospitality associations to create new associations. Hospitality groups were used to peddle myths about lost profits and promotion of programs of accommodation, of courtesy of choice, and that ventilation systems and designated smoking areas would work. Now, here was the proof of the pudding, actually. After this 5 years of the Spanish model, it was shown scientifically that it was a complete failure. The designated smoking rooms that were installed in restaurants or bars showed that they cannot protect non-smokers from secondhand smoke. These were measures of salivary continine. So this is just what nicotine becomes once it comes into your body. And it showed that there was no statistically significant change between those premises where smoking was permitted in designated areas and smoking permitted throughout the premises. So if a restaurant didn't have any restrictions, or if a restaurant from 2005 to 2011 had these smoking rooms, basically the measurements of nicotine exposure were about the same. There was no effect, so there was no protection. Whereas at the top here, when smoking was completely banned, we show a very statistically significant reduction in exposure to deadly secondhand smoke. So what happened? In 2010, the Spanish government rethought things with public support, contributions of scientists to show that this partial ban was ineffective and was a complete error. Efforts by Public Health Administration. The government then adopted a complete ban on smoking in the hospitality sector, restaurants, cafes, and bars. And we see then the scoring system in 2005. Everything was yes, healthcare facilities, universities, public transport, except restaurants, cafes, pubs, and bars. And in 2010, they switched that over and had a complete ban in all public places and workplaces. And here's the evidence and how it plays out in other jurisdictions as well, too. What happens when you have these complete bans on smoking in restaurants and other public places. In Ireland, Scotland, Mexico City, you can see over an interval before the bans occurred and after the bans occurred, the prevalence of observed smoking in restaurants and other smoke-free laws. So evidence from multiple countries and cities in this case show that complete bans are very effective in reducing exposure to secondhand smoke. Likewise, in bars and pubs, the message is the same. And let's remember that this is like a globalization over a short period of time. Remember that the first country ever to become 100% smoke-free was Ireland in 2004. And the former Director General of WHO, Dr. Lee, said, in fact, if Ireland could do it, any country in the world could do it, because he said the way that the Irish really valued their smoky pubs and as meeting places, etc., that if they could do it, any country in the world can do it. And in fact, now 49 countries and territories in the world have become 100% smoke-free over the next 10 years, and we'll have some new figures this summer to show that the number of countries is gathering pace. Now, just some because these are very pertinent to this discussion in Japan right now, because in the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare draft legislation, they're talking about ventilation in designated smoking rooms. Well, scientific evidence has shown that these are definitely not effective. Rigorous empirical studies over the last over a decade have demonstrated that ventilation in designated smoking rooms do not prevent exposure to secondhand smoke. And remember, we're talking about a Class A carcinogen and also a very cardiotoxic substance here. I mean, secondhand smoke, for example, would be equivalent to asbestos, allowing asbestos to freely float around in a restaurant or bar. No owner, no employer, no government would agree to have asbestos floating around in a public space or workplace. This idea of designated smoking rooms need to be examined very, very carefully. And it shows that smoking anywhere in a building significantly increases concentrations of secondhand smoke, even in parts of the building where people do not smoke. The microparticles get through the ventilation system and cross throughout buildings and between rooms. Physically separating smokers from non-smokers by allowing smoking only in designated smoking room reduces secondhand smoke exposure by a small amount, but it does not provide full protection. Comprehensive smoke-free laws are the only effective means of eliminating risks associated with secondhand smoke, and ventilation techniques should not be relied upon to control health risks from secondhand smoke exposure. And we've seen further evidence of this coming from studies showing that smoke-free policies do not harm businesses, because we often hear from the hospitality sector, we did in the Spanish example, we hear in all countries that are moving towards comprehensive smoke-free bans that it's going to hurt my business. Owners are worried that it's going to that their customers are going to disappear, etc. Now, WHO has just released the largest, and in fact, this is only the executive summary. The report is actually 700 pages, and we couldn't have carried it in the room, actually. It's the largest study ever of the economics of tobacco and tobacco control. And as part of that, we've analyzed as well too smoke-free policies, and especially the economics of smoke-free policies and their effects on businesses. And it's been showing conclusively that comprehensive smoke-free policies do not have negative effects or consequences for businesses, including restaurants and bars. This is a myth. For example, the area of restaurant sales, studies from US, Australia, Norway, Canada, South Africa, Mexico, Argentina have shown that enacting smoke-free laws do not lead to decreased revenues for restaurants. Some have even reported increased sales. The impact on the number of establishments. Another set of colleagues in the US counties showed that there was no significant effect on business openings and closings, and immediately following a smoking ban, for example, in Ottawa, Canada, bankruptcy and insolvency indicators were lower compared to the previous 2 years. So we got to speak fact here. And in fact, another area that is often argued is business value. A study by Glantz concluded that the value of restaurants was actually 16% higher in smoke-free jurisdictions, and the value of bars was unaffected either way by smoke-free policies. Also, impacts on employment. In New Zealand, a study found that employment in cafes and drink establishments rose by 9% and 24% respectively, despite a small decline in employment in clubs after the implementation of the smoking ban. Other benefits of smoke-free policies: increased worker productivity and lower absenteeism. It's estimated that the costs, I read a figure that I think in Japan, the health costs, I believe, in Japan due to smoke and exposure to secondhand smoke are about 38 billion, which are twice as much as the actual sales and revenue from tobacco in this country. They lower insurance premiums for establishments and employees, reduce cleaning and maintenance costs, and there's healthcare savings. And also, the tally of studies that assess the economic impact of smoke-free policy in the hospitality sector really shows, despite this is actually evidence from the tobacco industry. So the tobacco industry sponsors flawed research around the world. It's the greatest obstacle to enacting comprehensive smoke-free policies. And this particular slide actually summarizes those surveys that showed a negative effect. And in fact, all of these studies except 2 were sponsored by the tobacco industry. And so 52 out of 55 studies that found a negative economic impact were funded by the tobacco industry or unknown sources, and only 2 of these studies could be found in peer-reviewed journals. So they were not credible scientific studies. Also, we want to emphasize that smoke-free policies, when they're adopted, are very popular, with both smokers and non-smokers alike, in fact. We show here New Zealand, New York City, California, Ireland, Uruguay, up to 70 to almost over 90% of the population approved of these laws after its implementation. In fact, after Ireland's implementation, it was about 90% approved, and it was about 70% of smokers, in fact, that approved of the comprehensive laws. As well, too, we should really remember that this is really an occupational health and safety issue. When you're talking about bars and restaurants and factories and offices as well too. And this was one of the key messages that Michael Bloomberg and his staff, when he was mayor of New York, when they introduced the Clean Air Act early in this century, they emphasized that this was a occupational health and safety matter. It's about protecting the lives and health of workers and staff as much as it is customers. And the lessons learned from the New York City Smoke-Free Air Act is it gains support early from key policymakers, define the problem as a worker health and safety issue, which it is. It would be, just as I said, like putting asbestos in a room where the public has access. You would never do that. Document evidence that smoke-free business workplace laws do not hurt business, and educate the public and employers about the benefits of smoke-free environment. And let's remind ourselves the evidence that these policies are very effective. The latest evidence coming from the Cochrane Review and other sources have shown that within 1 year, a very short period of time, of implementing a 100% smoke-free ban, the admissions to hospitals, for example, for myocardial infarcts, reduces anywhere between 10 and 20%. And those improvements over time continue to increase. So just to finalize, to conclude, so we can have some conversation, that really we're at a golden opportunity now in Japan with the Tokyo Olympics, Summer Olympics coming up in 2020. WHO has supported a number of cities, a number of Olympics, and has produced a guide to tobacco mega events. And the legacy of a smoke-free Olympic Games is really a catalyst for action at the national level. And that's really important in Japan here, where there is no protection for the population from secondhand smoke. Our guides for mega events such as the Olympics is that there should be a ban of all forms of tobacco advertising and ban of sales of tobacco at the event. WHO and the International Olympic Committee have signed an agreement to improve healthy lifestyles. That was an agreement that expired in 2015, but we're in the process of renewing it. The WHO and the IOC are teaming up to promote healthy lifestyle choices, including physical activity, sports for all, tobacco-free Olympic Games, and prevention of childhood obesity. And the recommendations that I've been talking about here of a national 100% smoke-free law are completely consistent with Article 8 of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which recommends that each party implements a comprehensive total ban on smoking in public public places and workplaces, no designated smoking areas within 5 years of entry into force of the treaty. So Japan has not met that commitment. Now, just before closing as well, too, I wanted to look at the effects of other mass events, actually, in the world and how they've panned out as far as being a catalysis for a catalytic agent for smoke-free laws. The question is, will the World Rugby Cup and Summer Olympics in Tokyo be the next mega events to be free from tobacco? And also, it's very important that it's not only about these events. These events should be catalysts for Japan to be completely smoke-free before the Olympics in 2020 and the Rugby Cup. Tourists coming to this country now are expecting to come to countries where they're offered clean air and restaurants and all the hospitality in area and public transport, etc. In the case of Beijing, the Olympics in 2008, as I said, gave rise to 100% perfect smoking law in Beijing in 2015. And then also Shenzhen and Shanghai. Shanghai is the second largest city in the world behind Tokyo, have all become 100% smoke-free, as well as Hong Kong and Macau. There's another 5 cities in China that are on the way to becoming 100% smoke-free, and the State Council is now currently debating 100% smoke-free comprehensive law. Vancouver in 2010 was already fully smoke-free, and the Olympics were smoke-free, and Canada and Vancouver were 100% smoke-free, likewise in London. Now look at Russia, because that should be a really important and instructive message for Japan. The smoking rates and prevalence rates both in women and men are much higher than Japan, and Sochi became smoke-free before the Olympics, and then Russia adopted a national 100% smoke-free legislation in 2013 and has been enforcing it very strictly. Likewise, Brazil and Rio, before the Summer Olympics in Rio, also adopted a smoke-free legislation in advance of the Olympics. So, in conclusion, Japan is a country I've been visiting for decades as well, too. I love this country. It's seen by most of the world as a country that's already in the next century, in the 22nd century, as socially, technologically, scientifically. But in many ways, when we're talking about tobacco control, and especially smoke-free legislation, Japan is still very much caught in the last century as well, too. And as I say, my eyes were caught to that article a few weeks ago. I can't remember which newspaper article it was, but it said that Japan is very much a paradise for smokers. So I'm sure that as Japan prepares for the Summer Olympics in 2020, it would rather be seen to be a paradise, to be seen as a paradise for health. And certainly a comprehensive smoke-free law in Japan would assure that that advance will be achieved, and the investment in preparing for the Olympics will also be a healthy investment in making sure that Japan is totally protected. The Japanese population are completely protected by a proven intervention for saving lives. As I said, those 15,000 plus deaths every year here in China due to exposure to secondhand smoke are 100% preventable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll open it up to questions. As our habit, the first questions can come from the working press table over here, and then some other people. Actually, I would like to start it off with a question, if I may.
Right.
In the town that I live in here in Tokyo, I noticed that there are no smoking signs embedded in the pavement, sidewalk outside the buildings. Is this? I had never noticed it before. My son, who is an occasional smoker, pointed it out to me. And is this part of the complete ban on smoking, to have a ban on smoking while walking on an an outdoor street, sidewalk?
Now, I understand that this has been, this measure has been taken to protect people from burns in crowded malls, etc., where people may be crushing by, and to avoid children and other vulnerable people from getting burned by a smoker passing by. Also, to protect against pollution. These are all good measures and objectives to be taken, but those are not protecting the population from exposure to tobacco smoke. You do have, in fact, it's kind of upside down from what countries and cities that have taken comprehensive smoke-free laws do. For example, when Hong Kong SAR or New York City became 100% smoke-free, as I said, banned smoking in all public places, restaurants, discotheques, etc., enforced it. They've gone on as well, too, in New York City, for example, to ban smoking in parks. For example, Central Park now is smoke-free. Beaches, Hong Kong, China has also done the same thing. So as far as I know, there's no other country in the world, actually, who has banned or restricted smoking in the outdoor and has done nothing inside. It's a kind of turning the world upside down. It is they're worthy measures, but they and I'm not criticizing them. They have rationale to prevent pollution and littering and burn accidents, etc. But they should definitely be accompanied, and should have been, actually, one would imagine, should have been presaged or preceded by a comprehensive smoke-free law. As I said, other areas of the world do it in steps. They start where the science is, indoors. WHO, even where I work in Geneva, we started with Dr. Brundtland, and our former Director General, the former Norwegian Prime Minister, in the late 1990s. And, well, in fact, smoking was banned in WHO. It's hard to believe, but it was in the 1980s. But then also making sure all of our staff were covered by cessation support. And only about 5 or 6 years ago as well, too, we've now made the entire campus smoke-free. So the park area, the parking lots, et cetera, But the first step was to make all of our WHO buildings 30 years ago or whatever, indoors, 100% smoke-free. The other steps as far as making our campuses externally smoke-free have come as an evolution of our public policies.
Any questions from this table? Yes?
Michael Penn of the Shingetsu News Agency. You mentioned in your information towards the beginning that about 15,000 non-smokers each year are dying from secondhand smoke in Japan.
Yeah.
I'd just like you to kind of put a little meat on those bones. What do we know? Who are these people? What's the profile of these non-smokers who are dying from the secondhand smoke? Thank you.
Okay. Well, I would take I disaggregate the global figure, because I don't think I have the Japanese. Do you have that figure on your fingertip? They're mostly women and children. But at the global level, of the 600,000 people who are estimated to die from secondhand smoke globally, about 25% of those are children, and about 47% of those are women. And it is basically women and children exposed to secondhand smoke of male colleagues, potentially in the workplace, in the household, over a long period of time. And I said, this is not anywhere mysterious. As I said, and it shouldn't be mysterious here in Japan, because, as I said, the evidence came from this country. The first ever study, and the first, and in fact, we have a colleague, maybe more than one colleague, but we have Yumiko Mochizuki, mother of tobacco control in Japan. But I think you knew Professor Hirayama as well, too, and knew his study. But this really was a breakthrough as well, too, that you take a simple, apparently simple, but never been done before, taking a significant number of wives of smoking husbands and non-smoking husbands and compare them over a number of years and show that the wives of smoking husbands had a statistically much more significant rate of lung cancer. We now know that secondhand smoke also increases the risk of myocardial infarcts, acute coronary events, strokes. In children, it causes respiratory problems, it causes middle ear infections, and it also increases, we don't know exactly the pathology, but it increases the rates of sudden infant death syndrome amongst very young children. So there's no mystery here. Those populations who are most exposed to secondhand smoke, and that's the case certainly in Asia, is where you've had high rates of smoking by men and quite low rates in women. It is the women and young children that suffer. And countries now have actually, I mean, my own country, Canada, and I think Scotland and other jurisdictions now are also taking tougher measures that they control as well to smoking in cars as well too, because children, underage children that are exposed to secondhand smoke in the car, obviously a small area, and if you've got a few adults smoking in the car, I mean, you're basically living in a gas chamber. So you know, very, 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 very toxic. Countries have also, I know, the country I know best, Canada as well too, has responded to yet another aspect of this. I was just speaking to one journalist. Very few know about this as well too, or heard. You probably, well, the scientists and the public health people would have heard it. But there's a new addition to this: third-hand smoke. So third-hand smoke is a new area. We don't know how to quantify its effects, but we know that secondhand smoke contains about 4,000 different chemicals, a few hundred very toxic chemicals, and about 50 carcinogens. And the smoke actually in a hotel room or a car or whatever embeds into fabric, into couches, into rugs, etc., and can live there for very long periods of time. And it certainly then it migrates back into the air as well too, and it definitely has health harm effects. So for example, I know in Canada, whenever I visit there and I rent a car, there's a sign on your rent-a-car: if you're found smoking here, you will pay whatever, $500 to clean this car. Or I check into my hotel room: if you smoke in this room, you'll pay the cleaning charges of $1,000 or whatever for this hotel room. And certainly as Japan is preparing for the Olympics as well too, as I say, that going from no country in 2004 that had a comprehensive smoke-free law to now that we have 49, and certainly that number, when we report on our new data, is much higher. The expectation of the world is now for clean air. So certainly the global tourist industry and tourists are expecting when they come to hotels, they come to a country, to have clean air when they go out to eat, etc. And also in Japan here, there's multiple surveys that I've looked at that have been done recently in the preparation as the government is looking at this new smoke-free law. Over 70% of the Japanese population supports a 100% ban on smoking in all public places and workplaces, a comprehensive law. So the notion of that this is going to harm businesses, or that the population is going to not support it, or politicians are going to lose their seats or whatever, is just not borne out by those facts, because those figures are also very similar to other countries that have adopted smoke-free policies. Is the majority of the population wants to breathe clean air when they're in a hospital, when they're in a school, when they're in a bus, when they're in a subway, when they're in public transport, when they're having dinner with their family, etc. It's no mystery. So, and the time is ripe now. As I said, time is ripe for Japan to finally catch up now with the Olympics just around the corner.
This table, any more questions from the working press? I see a hand over here. I think it's hard to see against the light. Anyone else with questions, not just from the working press?
There's a question there.
Yes, sir, over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Yusuke Wada. I'm from Kanagawa Prefecture, and I'm also from an anti-smoking man. One of my friends is ex-governor of Kanagawa, Mr. Matsuda, who is also now the upper parliament, and the person who supported him during this campaign of anti-smoking in Kanagawa was Dr. Akira Hase of Fujisawa. As you know, the 2020 Olympics in yacht race will be held in Enoshima, which is also in Fujisawa. My question is, the Japanese, as you said in the third-hand smoking in their area, you said about the rugs and all that. We are trying to push the hotels and restaurants as well as all these public areas to go cleaning up all the cleaning up the rugs and all that for the so the smoke carcinogens won't stay there. But still, the Japanese industry is very worried about the income of the taxes. What can you say about the Ministry of Finance says we want tobacco tax money, but the Ministry of Work and Labor is saying that we're trying to stop the tobacco smoking because of the cost of the medical system. What can you say about about how to keep? How would you say to balance off this Japanese system? How to get these people to get the government to stop people to stop smoking? If you can understand that question.
Yes, I've got it. Yes, and I know former Governor Matsuzawa and Governor. He's in the Diet now. I knew him WHO appreciated his efforts in Kanagawa Prefecture to move forward tobacco control, and they did. They moved forward tobacco control in some areas, as I understand, hospitals and educational institutions, but they wanted to go the whole way, but there was resistance from the hospitality sector as well too. And again, this resistance by the hospitality sector is not at all, I said, unique. It's a stereotyped reaction which just occurs in every country in the world that goes for a comprehensive ban. What happens is that the front groups of the hospitality industry then come up with the lost revenue and scaring restaurant owners, and that they're going to lose business and they're going to go out of business, et cetera, et cetera. The true message is that what Japan needs, like every country in the world as well too, to protect its population, is 100% comprehensive law. If you put it in effect and you implement that well, you should start as well too by having like they've done in Ireland and New York and all places, Beijing, have a transition period where you have a awareness building campaign as well too, where you can straighten out the messages so the population, so you have messages direct to the population so they understand why this is a good thing, to try to reassure business owners as well too, to try to reassure smokers that this is not about anti-smokers as well too. I just had a question in the previous interview, are you against smokers? I said WHO is not against smokers. WHO is for smokers, to help smokers to make a healthy choice. We're for non-smokers. We're for to help all populations create an environment to make healthy choices. Certainly, there is the message going around that the tobacco industry sees WHO as their major enemy, and my boss, Dr. Chan, says, she always says, we wear that badge very proudly. But the message is that WHO doesn't victimize smokers. Our business is to help populations live healthier and longer lives. So we want to create facilitating environments through, for example, comprehensive smoke-free laws to protect children, non-smokers alike, and also protect smokers and help them through through such measures to think about and look for assistance to quit as well too, because it's never too late to quit. The proof is that there's health benefits of quitting throughout your life. Even if you've smoked 20 or 30 years, you're still going to accrue benefits. And again, the figure. We've recently in this, and I'd urge you to get a copy of this Economics of Tobacco Control. The global figure that was published here is that, in fact, that the total costs of tobacco use, that includes lost productivity, the healthcare costs, all indirect and direct costs, cost the world's economy about $1.4 trillion. The data I've seen here in Japan as well, too, is that the healthcare costs alone are quite significantly higher than the benefit to the economy. But it really, I think there needs to be, along with changing this understanding of smoking in Japanese society, in advance of implementing, I hope, I'm glad that the Ministry of Health of Labor and Welfare have introduced this initial draft, which would bring Japan from the lowest level to the second lowest level. But I hope that, in fact, that Japan can do what Russia did, what Brazil did, what China is doing in many cities as well too, and China is looking as an entire country to implement 100% comprehensive law that's going to protect the entire population from deadly effects of tobacco smoke. I mean, this is no mystery here. I mean, we've known this now for decades as well too, and this is just common sense. And so I hope, I think it's a golden opportunity now. And Japan is investing so much as well too, the billions and billions of dollars to prepare for the Olympics, and I'm sure it's going to be an overwhelming success, and it will be even more of a success in the eyes of the world community if Japan is smoke-free, and it will be a success as well too, because Japanese people will be much healthier, much happier, and will live much healthier lives as a result of adopting a new law. So I hope that as this political discussion continues, that there can be also strengthening of that Ministry of Health, Labor, national law proposal to include also all the bars, restaurants, and discotheques, etc. Of course, with a phasing process, because designated smoking areas, the courtesy of choice, like smokers sit in one area, non-smokers sit in another area, doesn't protect anyone. It's just as deadly, actually. So, to do that, of course, there would have to be a campaign to business people as well too, so that they can understand that this is not going to hurt them. It's going to be good for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Another question? If not, I'd like to ask.
One more here.
Hi, my name is Miko Mochizuki from Japan Cancer Society, and thank you very much for your talk and to encourage us very much. But I just wonder, your Article 8 clearly mentioned to protect people from tobacco smoke. So from WHO standpoint, I think there is no distinction between smokers and smokers. All people should be protected.
Everyone.
So that kind of message is not adequately translated into the Japanese language, because we are still using the word passive smoking,
Yes.
and then just to protect non-smokers. So I think that kind of misperception should be corrected from your message.
Right.
So what do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, this is about, and as I said, this is about protecting the entire population, protecting smokers and non-smokers alike as well too. And certainly, and that's why I think that comprehensive bans on smoking are also very popular with smokers as well too. As I said, after Ireland implemented its ban comprehensive ban in 2004, 90% of the population supported, but also about 70% of non-smokers, or because of smokers, because smokers know that secondhand smoking bans also protect their health and well-being as well too. There are benefits both that because of reducing the exposure to side stream smoke, but also encouraging them to quit as well too. And also we know that in countries and cities and jurisdictions where you have comprehensive smoke-free bans as well too, that the rates of smoking in the household also decrease as well too. That parents become more conscious about not exposing their children or their family members to smoke. They realize also smoking is deleterious in a closed space to themselves. So if they continue to smoke, they make efforts to go outside and to and likewise the rates of smoking in private vehicles, et cetera, also changes because it helps the culture of the society changes as well too. And it's very important to because some are concerned how difficult will it be to enforce this, but the lessons from now for almost almost California became smoke-free 20, 25 years. After a certain period of time, these laws almost become self-enforcing because the population realizes that it's good for everyone, good for smokers, good for non-smokers, and good for everyone. It's protecting the entire population, as Yumiko said, from exposure to secondhand smoke. Right.
We've come to that time.
Okay.
We could take some more questions if you want, or have the time.
I think you had one question before we close, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can. Yep.
Okay, we've come to the end of our program. Mr. Bettcher has graciously given me permission to ask another question. And my question is, I used to work and live in Thailand, and they require gruesome pictures on packages of cigarettes, open heart, black lung, all kinds of grotesque scenes. Do these things work?
Absolutely, and that's under the Empower. Those, I think, probably will see our last report, actually, probably the 2015. We have pictorial warnings, graphic pictorial warnings of over 50% are more effective in convincing people to quit, as well to a number of countries now, including France, Australia, the UK, and about 10 other countries are in the process of, Australia has already implemented, whereas UK and France are in the process of implementation of plain packaging as well too, so that in fact that the color of the package must be the same. In this case, it's a kind of off-green brown color with the graphic warnings, and the brand must be in the same font, and there'll be a helpline message as well too. And this prevents the package to be used as a advertising promotion material, and also enhances the effects of the pictorial warnings. So those are one area that could be improved in Japan, but step by step. I think one of the most important initiatives, and where there seems to be some political momentum in Japan, is to move forward with this secondhand smoke comprehensive ban. So I wish Japan all of the best, and hope to come back into 2020 for a smoke-free Olympics, but also for us to see a smoke-free Japan. That'd be great.
We've come now to the end of our time for this press conference, so we give our thanks to Mr. Bettcher and say goodbye. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.